On the morning of August 30th, Crimea awoke to a coordinated strike. 3 heavy long-range cruise missiles launched in sequence from the coastline, each weighing 7 tons and carrying massive warheads. Their targets: a key FSB border guard post and a nearby patrol boat facility. Video confirmed the planned firing order and the pre-mapped flight paths, underscoring that this was no isolated strike, but a carefully orchestrated opening blow. What began as an attack on border security and naval infrastructure carried a wider message. It was only the start of a campaign aimed at undermining Russia's most vital symbol, the Kerch Bridge. The first strikes, unveiling a new era of conflict. This first coordinated wave marked the beginning of what can only be described as a new era of conflict in Crimea. Video of the triple cruise missile launches from Ukraine's coastline showed a sequential firing pattern and pre-planned flight corridors, leaving no doubt that this was a deliberate strike package rather than a sporadic exchange. The missiles, each weighing 7 tons and carrying heavy warheads, tore into targets on the northern peninsula, an FSB border guard outpost, and a patrol boat facility. These objectives were carefully selected to undermine Russia's security architecture and disrupt its ability to move forces and supplies. Almost in tandem, another front opened, this time above Simferopol Air Base. Swarms of drones were sent to exploit gaps in the Russian air defense umbrella, which struggled to track and prioritize so many simultaneous threats. The outcome was immediate and damaging. Local and open-source images indicated that 2 helicopters, a Mi-8 transport and an Mi-24 gunship, were destroyed on the ground. Such losses not only reduced Russia's operational lift and firepower, but also revealed the fragility of its defensive posture, even at one of its most important installations. Equally significant was the strike's effect on Russia's high-end air defense assets. Military intelligence reported that components of the S-400 family, including the 96 L6AP radar and several key communication elements, were disabled during the same wave of attacks. Because S-400 components and navigation nodes were hit simultaneously, the attack struck at the backbone of the local air defense and command picture. Suddenly, Russia's layered system, long advertised as near impenetrable, was riddled with vulnerabilities. Ukraine's targeting extended beyond immediate military hardware. Strikes also hit coastal surveillance equipment and a GLONASS-based navigation node, degrading Russia's ability to monitor movements and coordinate across its command and control network. This kind of targeting broadened the scope of the assault from tactical to systemic, touching not just frontline defenses, but the infrastructure that knits those defenses together. The result was a wider disruption to Russia's integrated air and maritime situational awareness. The core impact of this campaign was not simply measured in destroyed helicopters, disabled radars, or damaged facilities. It was in how these parallel strikes combined into a single operational effect. Missiles pressed from the north, drones swarmed from multiple directions, and specialized strikes degraded monitoring systems across the peninsula. The synchronization forced Russian defenses to split their attention and react late, reducing the effectiveness of even their best systems. This was both a material and a psychological blow, a demonstration that coordination between different strike domains could unravel defenses once thought impossible to penetrate. The immediate tactical outcome was clear. Crimea's defenses were spread thinner, large assets were lost, and communications degraded. But the broader significance lay in the precedent it set. Ukraine showcased an ability not only to strike deep into fortified territory, but to do so with precision timing between missiles, drones, and cyber-electronic disruption. This was not an act of harassment or a symbolic gesture. It was the creation of new conditions where Russia could no longer assume consistent control over its own staging ground. The idea that Crimea was untouchable just collapsed in a single coordinated window of strikes. If helicopters at one of its main air bases could be destroyed in daylight, if S-400 radars could be knocked offline, if the navigation systems supporting ships and air defenses could be disrupted, then the peninsula's importance shifted from secure bastion to exposed pressure point. The question now is how far Ukraine can carry this advantage. If these layers of defense can be degraded in hours, what can a new Ukrainian long-range system do when paired with drones? Flamingo, the strategic game changer. The Flamingo cruise missile system enters this conflict as more than just another weapon. It changes calculations because of three defining attributes: range, payload, and mobility. Reported as a domestically produced long-range cruise missile, Flamingo is assessed to reach up to 3,000 kilometers, carry a warhead weighing around 1,150 kilograms, and launch from mobile platforms rather than static sites. Ukraine's president has stated that roughly 210 units have already been produced, a number that signals not only capability, but also the intent for repeated, sustained use without outside constraints. This matters because Flamingo is not designed to be a one-off strike instrument. Its range allows it to place pressure far beyond the front lines. Analysts note that at its maximum reported reach, Flamingo could target a wide array of Russian military and industrial assets. Some reporting even suggests it could threaten major Russian cities, including claims that it could reach as far as Moscow, if launched from deep within Ukrainian territory. Even if such scenarios remain theoretical, the psychological effect of that potential alters how Russia must think about defense in depth. The missile's payload complements this range. At over 1,000 kilograms, its destructive power is sufficient to take down hardened sites, fortified positions, or critical naval infrastructure. The warhead size allows Flamingo to maintain impact, even if a strike is near miss rather than direct, with shock waves and secondary effects still capable of disabling key assets such as radar or communication nodes. This shifts the system into a category where precision coincides with brute force, giving Ukraine versatility in both strategic and tactical targeting. What elevates Flamingo from powerful to strategically disruptive is its launch method. Because the system relies on mobile platforms, defenders cannot rely on known missile bases or predictable firing points. Launchers can be concealed, moved between operations, and hidden within contested terrain or behind cover provided by already secured zones. This mobility forces Russian air defense planners to spread surveillance across wide arcs of territory, magnifying the chances of blind spots. Because the launcher is mobile, origin points remain ambiguous, and resources must be committed to hunting and covering zones that may never host a real launch. Each time batteries are stretched thinner, vulnerabilities emerge elsewhere, gaps that can be exploited by Ukraine in subsequent waves of attacks. Equally important is the missile's low-altitude flight profile. Flamingo has been engineered to fly terrain-hugging routes, skimming close to ground level and reducing its radar visibility. This limits the detection window for systems like the S-400, which excel at engaging higher altitude or more predictable aerial threats. A low flight path not only supplements concealment, but also ensures that when paired with other forms of pressure, such as drone swarms or electronic interference, the odds of interception drop substantially. Coordinated low-level approaches are especially hard to track, leaving even advanced layered defenses exposed. Each of these features combines into a broader strategy that strains Russian defenses. Whenever Moscow attempts to harden one node, say protecting naval facilities in Sevastopol, mobile launch crews can pivot to a different origin point and strike air bases or infrastructure elsewhere. In this way, Flamingo imposes a form of relentless uncertainty. The pressure doesn't emerge from one major blow, but from the constant reminder that another strike could come from another angle at any moment. The warhead ensures damage, the range extends options, and the mobility keeps defenders guessing. The cost is more than technical. Every added patrol across Crimea, every dispersal of S-400 batteries, and every radar now forced to scan broader arcs all represent resources diverted from other key Russian objectives. This is the systemic effect Ukraine is aiming for. Not just physical damage, but the slow erosion of confidence in Russia's defensive posture. Flamingo undermines predictability, replacing a sense of deterrence with an atmosphere of constant exposure. As a cornerstone of Ukraine's long-term campaign, Flamingo provides the means to degrade defenses over time without exhausting resources or relying on external delivery systems. Its purpose is not immediate collapse but continuous disruption, where each strike compounds the last by forcing defensive redistribution and creating logistical stress. In this framework, Crimea ceases to function as a secure staging ground. Instead, it becomes a contested zone where the very systems designed to defend it must run at maximum stretch day after day. From here, the implications narrow onto a single critical node. Among all potential targets within reach, air bases, radar sites, naval piers, one structure epitomizes both the vulnerability and the symbolism of Russia's position on the peninsula. It is not just infrastructure, but the central lifeline connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland, and Flamingo puts it firmly within the crosshairs. Kerch Bridge, Russia's vulnerable lifeline. The Kerch Bridge represents the single most critical artery sustaining Russian operations in Crimea. This vital bridge enables the uninterrupted flow of troops, equipment, and supplies from mainland Russia into the peninsula. Beyond its logistical purpose, it embodies Moscow's claim of permanence over its 2014 annexation, functioning as both infrastructure and political symbol. Disruption of its operation would reverberate through both the military supply chain and Russia's public narrative of control. Flamingo shifts the entire defensive equation around this structure. Its long-range, mobile launch system and low-altitude flight paths make the bridge a constant target without predictable launch points or observable approach patterns. Flamingo missiles can arrive from multiple vectors at close-to-ground level, reducing early detection windows and slipping past many defenses tuned for higher, more conventional threats. A single missile carrying a 1-ton class warhead has the capacity to damage piers and deck beams, meaning that even a near miss may force days or weeks of repairs and partial closures. The challenge is not whether Flamingo could destroy the bridge outright, but that it can render it unreliable with repeated strikes. The operational consequences are straightforward. Interruptions force costly rerouting through slower alternatives, delay movement of fuel and ammunition, and create bottlenecks that ripple across wider campaigns. Repairs consume materials, labor, and time, while troop deployments face setbacks that degrade tempo and planning. The strategic value lies not in collapse, but in disruption. The bridge does not need to fall entirely to lose its utility. It only needs to remain under constant repair pressure. The strategic goal is repeated disruption, forcing constant repairs and reroutes, rather than a single decisive demolition. That sustained pressure is what degrades logistics and decision quality over time. For Russian planners, the defense of the bridge has no simple template. They must choose between hardening the bridge with protective barriers, deploying denser radar coverage at low altitude, and positioning interceptors closer to the structure. Layering electronic jamming to hinder Flamingo's navigational systems appears logical, yet this risks interference with Russia's own communications and radar integrity. Hunting mobile launch platforms demands reconnaissance cycles and patrols that consume fuel and manpower, often with uncertain returns. Each of these measures is resource-intensive and cannot be sustained everywhere at once. For example, pulling a battery inland to guard the bridge leaves gaps on the forward line, creating new vulnerabilities elsewhere. In attempting to shield this one structure, Russia exposes others. Repeated waves of Flamingo strikes exploit this trade-off. The uncertainty of mobile launchers keeps defenses on permanent alert, expanding the protected radius far beyond the bridge itself. Patrols strain personnel and equipment. Interceptors deplete stockpiles, and radar crews face unrelenting pressure to track every possible vector. Whether or not each missile succeeds in a direct hit, the cumulative effect forces Russia to spend money, time, and manpower at unsustainable levels. The costs accumulate faster than tangible gains, a pace advantage favoring Ukraine. Psychologically, the bridge carries weight as a declared symbol of Russia's permanence in Crimea. Visible disruption undermines how both Russian society and the outside world perceive Moscow's grip on the peninsula. A bridge portrayed as untouchable instead appears fragile, contested, and perpetually under threat. This dual blow, undermining function and eroding perception, exceeds the immediate damage of any single strike. It creates an ongoing reminder of vulnerability at a point intended to showcase strength. Ultimately, this contest is less about whether the Kerch Bridge is destroyed in one sudden moment and more about whether Russia can maintain operational confidence in its uninterrupted use. Flamingo ensures that confidence is never secure. By repeatedly inflicting partial closures, repair cycles, and diversions, it steadily reduces the bridge's reliability as a supply lifeline. Each strike, each delay, and each costly defensive measure accumulates into a long-term erosion of certainty. This gradual wearing down of assurance is the essence of the campaign. Flamingo's power lies not in a dramatic instant of collapse, but in its ability to enforce sustained pressure over time. The consequences ripple outward, from delayed convoys to diverted defenses, turning a once symbolic guarantee into a recurring liability for Moscow. And that dynamic, more than any single attack, signals the larger shift now underway. The Flamingo missile system has rebalanced the fight in Crimea by shifting pressure from singular battles to a continuous campaign. Coordinated strikes expose the limits of Russia's air defenses. Flamingo multiplies the strain with its range, payload, and mobility, creating uncertainty that spreads resources thin. The emerging conclusion from these events: immunity is over. Russia must now spend more, accept gaps, and face mounting logistical disruption, giving Ukraine a tempo advantage over time. If this analysis helped you understand why Crimea's defenses are changing, like and subscribe and tell us in the comments. Which defensive trade-off do you think Moscow will choose? The first salvo on an FSB post was not an isolated show. It was the opening of a sustained pressure campaign that will force expensive defensive choices.